Hi everyone, we're here working with 9-4 Work Together. At the top in our question assets, we are seeing 6 transactions that we're going to go ahead and journalize onto a cash payments journal. We also have in our question assets a petty cash report, which we'll refer to, and our chart of accounts. With our transactions, we're going to be working with a cash payments journal. Now, a couple of things to note. First of all, we're working with October of the current year. We're working for Golden Fabrics on page 10 of a cash payments journal. Another thing to note is when we are recording a check number, you can see that all of our source documents are check numbers. There's no need in this column when we're recording our source document to include that check number. And the reason you don't have to do that is because obviously it says it at the top. If we're recording it on a cash payments journal, we're taking it that it is just a check that was written or it was cash. So we don't need to repeat ourselves and write C. So we'll actually just record that number. Now, with the cash payments journal, we're talking about any payments that are made with cash out of our business. One thing that you're going to see we use a lot is this column right here for accounts payable debit. A lot of times you're going to see where we're actually decreasing our accounts payable by paying on that account. So in order to decrease our accounts payable, we actually are going to debit it. We're going to show a decrease to that accounts payable. We're also going to be working with a purchases discount, which is where we're receiving money off if we pay an invoice early, if we're offered those terms. If we're not offered the terms, then we don't have any type of discount. And then we're also going to be working with cash, and obviously anytime we write a check or use cash to pay for something, that's going to decrease our cash. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and write in just the first date because we're working with October 2nd. Make sure there's a space in there. So working with October 2nd. It says that we wrote a check to Built-in Communications for a telephone bill, $124, check 521. So I can go ahead and throw in my check number 521. Now I wrote this for communications, a communications expense, okay, basically a utilities expense. Now I could take a look and see chart of accounts, what type of expenses we're using. Well, we don't have communications expense, so I'm probably going to put this under utilities expense instead of a communications expense that some other companies use. So I have a utilities expense here. Now, I don't have to record anything under the account title dealing with Built-in Communications. We're writing them a check. We don't owe them anything from here on out. There's no need to write their, they don't have anything to do with our accounts payable. We don't need to write that down. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to fill in my debit here, which is my utilities expense. And I'm going to debit my utilities expense $124 because when an expense increases, we debit it. Now I'm going to go and credit my cash $124 because I wrote a check. So I have a debit of $124, credit of $124, keeping me in balance. Next one. On the 3rd, I wrote a check on account to Grain Manufacturing covering purchase invoice number 532. Now, this was for $1640 less a 2% cash discount, and I wrote check number 522. So I wrote check number 522, and this took place on the 3rd. Now, I have a discount here that I have to account for, but the first thing I want to do is fill in my account title, and I wrote this to Gray Manufacturing. So I'm going to do Gray Manufacturing Incorporated because that's what's being affected. Now, Gray Manufacturing Incorporated, on my books, on my records, in my accounts payable, I owe them this amount, $1640. So I'm going to go ahead and debit my accounts payable $1640. I'm not going to write them a check for $1640 because I'm taking advantage of the discount that they offered me if I paid within a certain time frame. However, I still on my books show that I owe them $1640, so I'm going to deduct that. I want to get rid of that amount that I owe them on my books. However, I have a discount, so I'm going to take $1640. I'm going to multiply it by 2%. My discount is $32.80. So if I owed them $1640, but I had a discount of $32.80, I'm actually going to write them a check for $1607.20. Okay, and that's what I'm actually writing the check for. So $1607.20 plus $32.80 gets me to that $1640. All right, on the 9th. Wrote a check to LPF Manufacturing for merchandise with a list price of $15.75. So we're going to go ahead on the 9th. Now, I don't need to write down LPF Manufacturing. I wrote them a check. It was for cash. I don't owe them anything through accounts payable. What I do need to record is that I had a purchases. Okay, it's affecting my purchases account. However, this will not go on my purchases journal because it only goes on a purchases journal if I'm paying on account or if I'm charging that on account. If I'm paying at this time, I will pay for it obviously at this time on my cash. So I had check number 523. We're going to have a debit to purchases, and that amount was for $15.75, and we're going to have a credit to cash for $15.75. All right, next one on the 12th, wrote a check to Village Supply for office supplies, $64, check number 524. So on the 12th, we were dealing with office supplies. I don't have to include Village Supplies, so I'm just going to do supplies dash office. Check number 524. And that was for, so I'm going to have my supplies increasing, so it's going to be a general debit, so it was $64. And on my cash decreasing, that was $64. All right, next one on the 16th, wrote a check on account to Westland Supply covering purchase invoice number 516 for $426. No cash discount was offered. So on the 16th, we're going to have to debit our accounts payable to Westland Supply. So I'm going to include Westland Supply. And I'm going to debit my accounts payable to them. There's no discount here. So 426 is what I'm debiting, and then 426 is also what I'm crediting because, again, there was no cash discount offered. Check number 525. Last one, I need to replenish my petty cash fund. So on the 31st, I'm going to replenish my petty cash fund. In order to figure out what I'm replenishing, I need to look at my petty cash report. So my petty cash report supports receipts for a few different items. So the first thing it supports is a purchase for supplies dash office for office supplies, $48.15. Then it also supports supplies dash store for $57.18. And then it also supports a purchase for miscellaneous expenses at $47.64. Now, it told me I also wrote check number 526 to cover this. So I have receipts supporting supplies dash office, supplies store, miscellaneous expense. I have receipts supporting a total in payments of $152.97. Well, I typically keep $200 in this petty cash, so you do 200 minus $152.97 and you get $47.03. But when I count up the money that I have on hand, I have $45.98 on hand. So I'm short $1.05 of what I should have on hand. Now, when I'm short, I use that cash shorten over account, and when I'm short, I debit. So I'm going to say cash shorten over, and I'm going to debit $1.05. If I was over, I would credit. If I'm under, if I'm short, I debit. I add up all three of these together, what I'm going to replenish that amount for. Again, all of those three added up together, so I do $48.15 plus $57.18 plus $47.64 plus $1.05, $154.02 is what I will credit my cash. And that's it for 9-4.